Let's see what the news has in store for us this week. Okay. So the key stories for the past 7 days. Political tension and protest restrictions. Again. Home Secretary bans a major pro-Palestine march, citing the need to prevent serious disorder. This angle was carried by Morning Star, a left-wing outlet that often challenges government narratives and emphasises civil liberties. Alternative framing, focusing on state overreach, policing powers, and the shrinking space for protest. I put a YouTube video up about protesting in the UK and how they're trying to curb that. And I did see about the Home Secretary banning a major pro-Palestine march. It was not just a pro-Palestine march, it was also against the war in Iran. It's been, it hasn't been officially identified, I don't think, as an illegal war, but as far as I'm concerned, and also the people who were going on that march or were going on that march, as far as they were concerned, it's an illegal war. They were attacked completely unprovoked, and the excuses given by the powers that ought not to be are just not good enough. But our government has decided that that's not going to happen. We're not allowed to do a march complaining about the Iranian country being attacked. And they've labelled it as a pro-Palestine march. Well, it is a pro-Palestine march in the fact that Iran have said that they're quite happy to liberate the Palestinians from the Israeli regime. But it is really upsetting that, yet again, our ability to have a say is being curtailed. They're not allowing us to protest. They're not allowing, they've basically said, no, it's a ban. You cannot go out and protest about this. So there's been a lot of uproar, and I'm not happy. Public sector and digital governance. Digital ID plans continue to draw scrutiny, with Civil Service World reporting on Darren Jones's push for a national digital identity framework. Alternative framing, concerns about surveillance, data centralisation, and mission creep. Topics frequently explored by Byline Times, Open Democracy, and privacy-focused independent media. I have been on the government's website and I have filled out their consultation form. It's very long. It's worded in a way where they would like you to do yes, no. And as you go through the questions, you'll notice that they're kind of saying, if there's anything you'd like to add about what we're saying, and then you have to, if you say, well, no, because I don't agree with it, you don't get a chance to actually tell them what you think. So there's been a lot of bits on that consultation that I've had to say yes to, in order to be able to have the box revealed where I can actually tell them what I think. And they cover lots of different areas. It took me a while to do it because I did the whole thing from top to bottom. They give you a chance at the beginning of the consultation to just choose certain bits if you want to have a word. And I was like, no, I'm going to go through the whole lot and I'm going to let you know exactly what I think. So I did. And I must admit, I wrote about my concerns about surveillance. I wrote about the data centralisation and the mission creep. I also put in there about how, as public servants, they are overstepping the mark, and that none of what is being implemented from them at the moment was part of their manifesto, and therefore wasn't voted in. We didn't vote for this. We may well be consulted now, but it's not something that was part of their manifesto when we voted to have them as our government. So I included that as well. So if you're interested and if you're upset as I am about this digital ID, you can go onto the website and you can fill out the form. And I suggest that you do so. I'll put a link to it down in the notes so that you've got the link direct to that. UK political establishment under pressure. Peter Mandelson reportedly saw a 500,000 taxpayer payout after being removed as US ambassador, according to the Scotsman. He's got a bit of a cheek, hasn't he? Independent outlets often use stories like this to critique political entitlement and elite privilege. I should say £500,000 from the taxpayers, us, the people who are disgusted in his behaviour. He's expecting us to pay him out because he's been removed from his position. Well, he's been removed from his position because he was leaking secrets and telling other countries stuff about our country that he shouldn't have been doing. So he's lucky he's not in prison. Criminal justice and the prison system scrutiny. Court appearance over the prison murder of Ian Huntley, reported by The Independent but widely picked up by alternative aggregators like News Now. Independent media tends to highlight systemic failures in prisons, understaffing and safety issues rather than sensationalising the crime. I had seen about Mr. Huntley had been attacked. He's been attacked before, but he was attacked, and this time that attack led to no longer being on this earth. So he has passed away. I have nothing more really to say about that, apart from he was yet another depraved individual. Cultural and institutional shifts. Bank of England to replace historic figures on banknotes with wildlife imagery. Reported by Brussels Signal, a non-mainstream outlet with Eurosceptic slant. This is seen as part of a broader cultural shift away from traditional national symbols. Well, our historic figures, it would be nice, I suppose. I don't know if there's an underlying current of, oh, that's not acceptable. I haven't seen very much on social media about it, so I'm not sure it's been hugely kind of advertised. And if it was, then people are obviously not very distressed about it. And I don't mind seeing wildlife imagery on my banknotes. That's all right. Okay. So where these stories sit within the alternative media landscape, independent UK outlets span the political spectrum. We have left-leaning Navarra. I hate this because all the time that we're being told left-leaning, right-leaning, central, we're completely getting away from the fact that it's an us and them situation. It's not a left and right. It's not a central left and right. It's an us and them. And if we could just get out of the mentality of shouting and arguing at other people instead of looking up and shouting and arguing at our governance, I think we would get much further. So I'm not going to indulge Copilot on reading that. Okay, so that was Copilot. Now we'll ask Claude the same question. And as we know, Claude goes into a lot more resources. He checks out a lot more than Microsoft does. Oh, here's a roundup of the top UK news stories from the past 7 days. Epstein fallout, Mandelson documents released today. Now, the last thing I'd seen about the release of the Mandelson Epstein documents was that they hadn't been released. So we'll see. The biggest story dominating UK politics this week, the British government released files today showing that PM Keir Starmer was warned that Peter Mandelson's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein exposed the government to reputational risk. So he was warned. Yet he still appointed him as ambassador to the United States. Cabinet Minister Darren Jones said the due diligence did not expose the depth and extent of Mandelson's friendship with Epstein, and that Mandelson should never have been afforded the privilege of representing this country. I agree. Mandelson was arrested on the 23rd of February and has since been released without bail conditions as the police investigation continues. I agree. He should never have been placed in that position at all. And the fact that Keir Starmer knew about what was exposed is not acceptable. So I'm expecting to see a lot of stuff over the next week coming up on social media about that. Second, we have in line UK and the Iran war, the nation divided. Yep, the nation is definitely divided. The 2026 Iran war began on the 28th of February when the US and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, including the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The war remains largely unpopular in the UK. Polling by Survation found 43% of British adults called it unjustifiable, and 56% approved of Starmer's initial decision not to allow the US to use UK bases. Thousands of protesters gathered outside the US Embassy in London on Saturday to call for an end to the conflict. Now, I brought to you last week the fact that even though Keir Starmer came out and stood in front of everybody and said, we're not involved, we know that's a lie. We know that's a lie. And this is one of the reasons why the whole of our country is divided over it. We're being lied to. Today, there have been American bombers using Lakenheath to then go on to Iran. And if we're doing it in defense, why are we allowing the US to come onto our soil and reload bombs into their bombers? It's not exactly very defensive. Today, 3 cargo ships off Iran's coast were struck by projectiles, according to UK maritime trade operations, including one in the Strait of Hormuz that caught fire and forced its crew to evacuate. Well, if you listen to Trump would have you believe that he has effectively opened the strait and it's wonderful. You can go through, not a problem. However, Iran control the strait, and Iran have said that any country that still has US involvement in the Middle East, any country in the Middle East, they will not be allowed to use the strait until they have banished the US from their borders, from their country. And from what I am aware, Saudi was the first one to say, right, off you go, off you pop, take all your troops with you. But Iran has effectively wiped out most of the US bases in the Middle East anyway by bombing them. And that's one of the stipulations of this war will end. This is what Iran have had to say. This war will end when the US has gone. And there are lots of other parts to their demands for the war to come to an end. And all of them justified. If you're interested, they might come up on the news. Grok may well go into more detail. We'll see. But from our point of view, yes, the country is divided over this because we do not want to get involved. It is not anything to do with us. It affects us because our prices for petrol are going sky high. It's going to affect us. But we should never have become involved, and we should never have allowed the US to utilize our soil, either in our country or abroad, to do any of their maneuvers against Iran. We should have been like Spain. Spain has condemned the war and said it's an illegal war. We will not support it. And we should have had the backbone as the British people to do exactly the same. But unfortunately, our government didn't see it that way. Okay, jury trial bill passes despite rebellion. I could not believe when I saw yesterday that the jury trial bill has been passed. It's gone through the first stage of government, so this is not by any means the end. This is not that it's going to be put through. This is the first stage. But it was voted on, and largely, I think it was 302 Labour ministers said aye to it, and 200 and something of the rest of the House said no. So I would suggest, if you are in a Labour constituency, you find out if your minister, your Labour minister for your area, has voted A. And if they have voted yes to it, get on to them, talk to them, and just tell them that it's not acceptable. It's a massive infringement on our civil liberties. I've done the YouTube video on it. You can go and look it up. It's by far one of my most trending videos. It's got a lot of watches on it. It's a disgusting thing what they're trying to do. Plans to curb access to jury trials in England and Wales passed their first Commons hurdle by 304 votes to 203, with 10 Labour MPs rebelling and dozens abstaining. The proposals would replace juries with a single judge for cases where a convicted defendant would be jailed for up to 3 years. Lawyers, politicians and victims groups marched on Parliament on Tuesday in protest, rightly so. The Morning Star's editorial was blunt. The government pursues it because it resents the power juries give ordinary people to defy its authoritarian crackdown on protest, delivering not guilty verdicts in direct action cases. And that's what I said in my video on the jury trials. That's why they want to take away jury trials, because they want to have carte blanche to just put you in prison for protesting, put you in prison for saying something on social media that they don't like. That's what it boils down to. Any form of dissent, and they want to be able to haul you up in front of a judge that they deem is appropriate and have you put away. So that's why they're putting it through. That's why they're trying to do it. But like I say, this is just the first step. It's gone through Parliament. It has to go through the House of Lords. And from what I've seen on social media, my whole feed yesterday was full, chock-a-block full of the decision and how everybody is against it. And I think it could be the one thing that forces a general election, because it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And that's not just me as a commoner saying it's outrageous. That's members of the bar saying it's outrageous. That's MPs lobbying behind that, saying, no, you cannot do this. You cannot take away a fundamental right of the public to hold you accountable, because that is a dictatorship. And that's what I've been writing all over social media all yesterday. Like, this is a dictatorship. You cannot do that. So we'll see. I think the fight is just beginning. Starmer puts fuel duty rise under review. Chancellor Rachel Reeves had been set to increase fuel duty in September for the first time in 15 years, but Starmer confirmed the freeze will remain until September and be reviewed in light of the Iran war's impact on fuel prices. Right. At Prime Minister questions, Starmer clashed with Badenoch and Farage over their screeching U-turns on the Iran war. Both had initially backed US and Israeli strikes before reversing course. Well, Badenoch and Farage, I have no doubt that backed it to start with, and I have no doubt that they have been trawling through the social media and realizing that the majority of general public people are not agreeing. And if they can try and get some sort of support from the general public in any way, shape, or form, then they will do a U-turn because it's in their best interest to do it. So they're just jumping on the bandwagon of us standing there going, "That's outrageous." So yeah, they've decided to do a U-turn. Surprise! Starmer's political position precarious. Yeah, definitely. The Morning Star described the government as on its last legs, citing the Epstein-Mandelson scandal, the departure of Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney, and what it called stench of fraud and deceit, arguing it is hard to see Starmer lasting much beyond May. Byline Times has been examining how an AI analytics firm both provided justification for the US-Israeli strikes on Iran and profits from the conflict. Well, I did say earlier this year that I didn't see Starmer lasting very much longer. I did put my hat in the ring and say, oh no, I really think he's going to be gone by mid-year. Yeah, it looks like my prediction may well come true. Oh, I do hope so. I do hope so. But then what do we have to replace him? Just somebody else who's going to be the next dictator. Okay, Prince Andrew, removal from succession under consideration. The UK government is now weighing legislation to strip the former Prince Andrew from the royal line of succession, following his arrest last month as part of the Epstein investigation, causing his ties to the royal family to be described as all but decimated. Our royal family are in a very precarious position at the moment. I caught on social media, because I don't have a TV, so I don't watch any of the mainstream. I caught on social media that the whole royal family had turned up for what is some form of gathering. That's probably important, and you all know what it is, but I don't have a clue. They all turned up, and the Prince and Princess of Wales turned up initially first, I think, before the King and his wife turned up, and they were booed. The Prince and Princess of Wales were booed. And of all the royals that get a really good reception, usually the Prince and Princess of Wales, it's rare that they're booed, but they were booed. And then when the King arrived with his wife, they were both booed, quite royally too. So yeah, the opinions on the royals at the moment is not great. And the fact that Andrew was still evidently in line for succession, that stinks. So the fact that he's been taken out now, maybe that will quell some of the discontent in the country. I doubt it, but you never know. So that's it from Claude. Now we'll ask Grok, and we'll see what Grok comes up with. It's gone a bit too far. Okay. Ban on Al-Quds Day March in London. The Home Secretary approved a Metropolitan Police request to prohibit the annual pro-Palestinian Iran-linked event over fears of serious disorder and extreme tensions amid the broader Iran conflict. Organisers criticised it as suppressing peaceful protest, with backlash from community groups and alternative outlets highlighting perceived bias in UK policy towards Muslim-related events. So we had this from Microsoft, but as usual, Grok has gone into a little bit more detail. Microsoft didn't mention Iran, whereas Grok's given us what I'd already seen on social media. I have seen a few outbreaks of violence, not in a protest sense, but I have seen a few outbreaks of violence in our country over the pro-Palestine order and the Iran kind of order. So when it comes to people wanting to have their say and other people disagreeing, that has erupted into violence. So part of me understands why the Metropolitan Police would put a request in to prohibit the event. I do, as much as it pains me to say, I do understand why that's been put in. The bit I don't understand is why people cannot have their say without having to resort to violence. That upsets me. If you are articulate in the way that you come across, if you are able to voice your opinion without the need to become violent, then you should be able to be able to give your opinion. And people who do become violent mess it up for everybody else. The powers that ought not to be will always fall back on, oh, it could turn violent. And that is set from a precedent of people being violent. And it's got to the point now where they're actually stopping protesting because of that. So my shout out to everybody would be, call your jets, people. You can have your say, you can say what you think, and you can say it as passionately as you like, but you do not need to resort to violence. That is not necessary. It just isn't necessary. So, yeah, we've covered that. Peter Mandelson's appointment, controversy and Epstein links. So we've had this. Released files revealing warnings about reputational risk from Mandelson's past associations, including Jeffrey Epstein. So that's hinting that it's not just the Jeffrey Epstein stuff that Mandelson's been leaking to. It might be other people that Mandelson has been leaking to. During his nomination as US ambassador under the current government, this has fueled discussions in non-mainstream circles about political cronyism, transparency failures, and trust in leadership, with some calling it a bombshell damaging the PM. I would agree. There is no trust in the leadership in this country anymore. There is no transparency when it comes to our public servants, people who are supposed to serve us. UK military deployments and Iran war impacts. Reports of Royal Navy assets like HMS Dragon deploying to the region alongside market reactions. Alternative commentaries emphasises Britain's weakened position, unreliable alliances, and domestic cost of living pressures from energy shocks. Well, when Keir Starmer decided, oh, we're going to be gung ho and defensively we're going to deploy HMS Dragon, Trump turned around and went, don't bother, not interested, go away, and told him no. So from what I understand, it was turned back and it hasn't gone. I could be wrong. That could have changed because you know our government, they flip-flop all over the place. Bias in UK media coverage of Muslims. A report analysing tens of thousands of articles found significant negative bias in portrayals, particularly in right-leaning outlets. This ties into broader debates on media hostility, anti-Muslim definitions adopted by the government, and free speech concerns from independent monitors. Well, the only kind of outrage I've heard is what I've seen on social media over the Iran conflict, and people, rightly so, being annoyed and upset about it. I haven't seen so much about this negative bias in portrayals maybe I've not been paying attention. Maybe I need to pay attention more to that. Domestic incidents and migration-related concerns. Citizen journalism and X threads highlighted several alleged stabbing, violent incidents linked to migrant asylum seekers in places like Edinburgh, Birmingham, and Scotland. These are amplified in alternative narratives critiquing immigration policy, integration failures, and perceived government leniency. I think something I would have to say about that is when it comes to migrants and asylum seekers, there should be some form of, I don't want to say teaching them, but some form of having them understand that they no longer are in a country that poses a threat to them, and their reaction that has been ingrained into them from the country that they've come from is not necessarily appropriate in this country. Because it's like coming from a war-torn country and having PTSD. I'm not saying that that's why they're going around stabbing people and being violent incidents, but if you look at a bit about it from the concept of a man is in a country who's used to gunfire and bombs dropping around him, his natural instinct is to duck and hide. Whereas that same man is brought to the UK and he is walking down the street and a car backfires, he's going to have the same response. He's going to duck and he's going to hide. And that equates to if somebody is coming up to you and is being aggressive towards you, if that in your home country has caused you to be severely hurt in the past, which has meant you've had to leave, then there could be that knock-on effect coming here. I'm not excusing it. I'm not saying that it's acceptable behavior, because it's not. But there has to be some form of integration. There has to be some form of allowing these people that do come to our country to have a period of time where they are integrated into our life, our customs, and how we are, and just like a transitional period. It just makes sense to me. Hereditary peers removal from House of Lords. Legislation advancing to end centuries-old hereditary seats in the upper chamber, seen in some independent commentary as part of ongoing political reforms, but amid wider criticisms of the government's priorities during international crisis. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, whenever I've seen the House of Lords in action, half of them are asleep on the benches. So, maybe it is time to look at them. Other notable mentions: wildlife potentially replacing historical figures on UK banknotes, small boat crossing figures continuing, and scattered reports on spying arrests, China related again, or local issues like school safety. Okay. Well, from this week's point of view, there really isn't very much to look at from a health and wellbeing point of view. It's all very political again, but that's to be understood. Like we've got a government that's lying to us about where we are and what we're doing when it comes to the Iran war. We've got a government that's trying to change our democracy into a dictatorship. So there's a lot of dissent over all of that. But apart from that, from, like I say, health and wellbeing point of view, not too much that I would want to go and do deeper research on. So that was the news for this week.